show up here. I, along with my colleagues from Kent and Newaygo counties, would like to specifically talk about eliminating those random acts of career development by moving toward a more strategic K through 12 approach and provide some examples or shareables to you of career exploration. This presentation represents the work our regional teams, many of our teammates might be on this session as well, but the work that we're all doing with our districts to support students in their career development. When we talk about student career development, some may think this just lands in high school, but that is vastly incorrect. This leads us to the why behind and the importance behind that strategic approach. The state of Michigan now requires that each student identify both career goals and a plan of action to achieve them. This requirement is for all students. Beginning in 2019, the board of a school district or public school academy shall now ensure curriculum incorporates grade appropriate instruction on career development at each grade level in grades K through 12. To assist in this new expectation, that's where the Michigan Career Development Model was born. The data shows us that students tend to feel less prepared for future careers than they do for college. Students' sense of college readiness is lukewarm at best, but even fewer students feel prepared for a career. So key questions to ask ourselves: how do we as educators best prepare our students and maximize the career exploration opportunities our students get? How do we create a process of career exploration that can be consistently replicated? Any development is progressional, sequential, and builds over time. We do not expect students to take algebra before having spent time learning, experience, or building foundational math skills. Career development is the same. We cannot expect students to arrive at career and college decisions about their future, or know the skills needed without helping them to practice those skills, understand the process, and understand about themselves, their interests, their talents, and their abilities. This is reflected in the design and the thinking behind the Michigan Career Development Model. By creating career awareness in grades K through 5 and the opportunity for career exploration in grades 6 through 8, we can provide essential elements of employability skills and career success. Then, by high school, students refine their career goals and the necessary educational preparation needed to be productive citizens in a global society. Various career preparation activities provide advanced, real-world experiences that help students link their career options and educational decisions. If you give a man a fish, you feed him for a day. We know in order to help build that foundation, we have to equip our districts and teachers with the understanding of the Michigan Career Development Model and the tools that they can use to support career development. We want to teach them how to fish. What we want to do right now is share with you some of those examples of how our regional teams are helping those educators to fish. Our first example, or shareable, focuses on that K through 5 grade band, that building career awareness piece. In order to fish, one must first understand early awareness begins a strong foundation. Here I have shared a link to an article from the American School Counselors Association that further explains why career development needs to start early and that it is a process. In Muskegon, our team has developed a K through 12 career development menu that provides intentional, specific, countywide opportunities that tie directly to one or more targets within the career development model. These are divided by grade band, aligning to the model, supporting our districts, and understanding the progression of this work. A link to the menu is also provided. One of the opportunities that we have here is our second grade Kickstart to Career Connection project. The goal of this project that our second grade students get to take part in throughout the county is to build awareness of the careers, introduce those 6 career zones, make connections between what they learn in school and the world of work. This a project has connections that are literacy based, targets within the Michigan Career Development Model. I believe it hits 2 or 3. That's also tied to social studies and civic standards and social emotional ASCA standards. So when we have heard a lot from our districts, especially at the K through 5 level, is that anytime we can tie these opportunities and career development to existing standards or to existing things that they already have going on in the classroom, it is very helpful. The activity is a 1 to 3 week period, 20-minute lessons using the books, Whose Hat Is This?, Whose Tools Are These?, and Whose Vehicle Is This? We developed this activity as it was an example that was put in the Michigan Career Development model. So from beginning to end, what it looks like is you start with introducing those career zones. Next, you discuss the jobs or careers of parents or families. Then, as a class, you read one of the books, guessing whose it is for each page that it goes through. After reading, you brainstorm those skills learned in school important for success in those careers. This is where it might tie into social emotional or PBIS. Lastly, students complete a connecting project, a writing or drawing. And I have some examples on the next slides. And upon completion, the students here in Muskegon get an incentive payment put into their Kickstart to Career account. That is a savings program that we have here in Muskegon County that every kindergarten starts. When they start school, they get a savings account established for them, and they can continue to add to that over time. The funds in this account can be used for any college or career-related expenses after high school. All of our main districts participate in the program, so it's something the districts are well aware of and allows another connecting point for that savings program. However, you do not need to have a CSA, a children's savings account, in order to do this project. We've just tied it into something, again, that they were already doing. One district's approach. We had Matt Follett, a second grade teacher at Holton Elementary School, piloted this project last year. And these are some of the specific examples that he provided. So when we look at Whose Hat Is This?, the activity for the students was to design a shirt about what their career that they have an interest in. And so here's what those look like. They did it virtually. And so they added what they thought it was, what that shirt, some of the tools that they may need for that career. And then if we look at the next one, Whose Vehicle Is This? This is where Matt tied it into the teamwork skill. And he had students write down their birth dates. And without using verbal communication, they had to put themselves in order in chronological order based on their birth date. And so that worked on the skill of teamwork, and he tied that in nicely with their PBIS. And then the last one, Whose Tool Is This? He had the students design remote controls based on the career that they had an interest in, and what were some of the skills or things that they needed to make sure was on that remote control. Last year, this went really well, and so we've opened it up this year across the county, and we have several more teachers that are partaking in this. And so we're going to gather more examples and be able to share them out with our educators of how they can tie this in. At the bottom here, you will see there is a project detail sheet. That's a shareable of how the steps for the project. It also provides links to our career zone infographic for the educators. As you scroll down, you'll also see where his examples that we just showed you are linked in there. And then also the social studies standards and suggested teacher questions, the ASCA standards. If you want to do another teamwork activity that's surrounded from skill sets that we have. And then we also have read alouds linked. So everything is nicely right there for teachers to use and engage in, and for you to replicate perhaps in your district. Next up, my colleague Devin Pettis from Newaygo is connecting to career exploration in the middle school grade level.
Good afternoon, everybody. Thank you for letting me be with you today. It was about a year ago when I had this opportunity to speak to all of you and kind of let you know what we're doing out here in CRESA or in Newaygo County. And we really appreciate it. What we have for you today is kind of continuing that theme of, in order to fish, one must first. Well, in our situation, especially with COVID and kind of getting back to a normal at this point, is finding that intentional and purposeful moment that we can provide information to students. We have 5 different sending districts within Newaygo County. We have also 2 outside sending districts that come to the Career Tech Center. However, not knowing what the environment is in each district, it can fluctuate on a weekly basis. So if we could go to the next slide, our challenges are probably similar to all what all of you are facing as well. You know, in-person or virtual instruction, being able to work with faculties and instructional access. You know, what does that look like, or what has that looked like? Knowledge, you know, access of technology. We had to rebuild our knowledge and our delivery process for our students and being able to get with them. If we couldn't do it in person, how were we going to get this information out to them? And this develops some really strong collaborations, as many of you have probably gone through as well. This led to professional development over that time, new data collection methods that weren't available to us before, other than those surveys you hand out personally to people. We are now using forms, Microsoft Forms, to be able to gather our information so we can be more effective out there as well. And then that time and support and assistance from the different groups, not only within our organization here at NC RESA, but how do we support the locals and still get our information to them? If we could go to the next slide. What we wanted to do was to create instructional platforms that could assist and support students and staff in virtual environments. As I said before, as we know, we can't always get into a classroom for whatever reason. And so what we did and hoped to do was develop a context or a delivery method or model that we could work distance-wise and still connect. And we focused on several different levels, but I'm going to talk about the middle school level. And what we were able to do was to develop Google Classrooms that I would create. And these Google Classrooms would effectively get our information out to the students at different developmental levels and allow teachers to use it at their convenience. So if there was a downtime or if there was an open time that they could use this information, then we encourage them to use that. Some organizations have used this very effectively. And if we could go to the next slide, I'd like to give you a couple examples. Since we are limited on our on-site program visits and activities this year, although they're opening up now, we developed these to be shared with our locals. And I would offer this opportunity to any of you as we go through our presentation today. We want to make sure, if you're interested in these, look at my contact information. I'd be happy to invite you where you could grab one of these classrooms. I'd invite you, and then you can customize it to what you may have out there or how you may use it. As long as you don't mind me rattling off on a video to your students, you may want to change those, but to reflect your organization and your policies and procedures you have out there. So if we could look at grade 6, and what we tried to do in grade 6 is, in the past, we would invite students to come out to our facilities during that first week in April. And these sixth grade students, the reason we did that is because many of our students, as probably in some of your organizations, are taking the ACT. So we have a lot of open programs that we wanted to introduce students to. And prior to coming out to us, we would use the course information. If we could go to that real quick. It'd be the first section there of the unit. There we go. That we would introduce them to what and facilitate what this unit is about. And we would introduce it if we would go to the first lesson there. Yep, there's the course introduction. If we could go to the first lesson, perfect. We would provide them with a video and a worksheet, electronic worksheet that was a self-interest survey covering the 16 different career clusters that are out there. And they would go through that information and identify their personal interests. And that would lead them to a discussion, hopefully in the classroom, with their instructor, with their teacher, to help facilitate what program area they would like more interest in. And then what we would do is, if you would go down to the third unit, we would provide them with videos out there on our program that they could go out there. They could look at those videos, see if there are programs they're really interested in, look for more information, and hopefully in the next year, that will be more open to us to provide that on-site opportunity for students to come into our programs. If we could go to then to the eighth grade, because the eighth grade is a key year, as it is with all of you as well, in preparing students for that high school experience, helping them to set up their schedule, helping them to recognize what opportunities are out there. And what we tried to do with this, instead of me going out to each individual school district, we would take the time to do this virtually. And this can be done for students who are absent that day if we go back to on-site presentations, and give them the opportunity to see this same information. So I see a valuable opportunity that we can use this in the future once we get back to those options where we can do on-site presentations and on-site visits. We see, as you can see in the example, we use information directly from the state of Michigan, providing them what opportunities, what employment opportunities, career opportunities are available to them. And then we take that and we look at the programs here at the Newaygo County Career Tech Center, again, through videos. And we support all of this information as well through videos. I have the opportunity to walk them through this process. So you don't necessarily need a person like me in the classroom, but if you had a facilitator, such as an instructor or a teacher in that classroom, they could easily assist a student walking through this process. And then hopefully in the next year, we'll return to those on-site opportunities because I think, as probably most of you see as well, when you reach the heart of the students, when they have the opportunity to touch and see physically for themselves what is available to them, that makes a difference. And that's why we wanted to create an opportunity as close to that experience as we could. And with that, I'm going to be interested in answering any questions you might have and then sharing that information a little later. But I would like to turn this now over to Eric. And Eric, I leave the rest of the presentation up to you.
All right, can you hear me?
We can.
Oh, okay, fantastic. All right, well, thank you. Good afternoon, everybody. Thanks for joining us. And thanks to Michelle and Devin for sharing the first part. But we're getting to now the 9 through 12, the career preparation. And as a former secondary teacher, middle school and high school teacher, I admit that this is where we have spent a lot of our time focusing on since I've started in career readiness. And it is a good thing to do, but it's not the whole picture. And we're just going to follow that same theme, though. In order to fish, one must first develop a balanced scope and sequence of real world experiences and activities. Just like as I was a former English teacher, and we would have curriculum to meet standards. And if we were doing it effectively at the 9th grade and 10th grade, we would be meeting with the middle school, and the middle school would be meeting with the elementary school to make sure that there was a progression and to make sure it flowed and make sure that one skill built upon the other. We should be doing the same thing with career readiness. The difference I would propose is that for a lot of our teachers saying, well, that's not my job, or I don't do career readiness, I would say that we embed career readiness within our core curriculum. We embed career readiness in English language arts. We embed career readiness in social studies and science and math. And in just a couple of moments, I will give you an example of what that should look like. Before I forget, there are a couple of links here to career chats and professional pop-up panels. I'll mention those in just a few minutes as well. And then a link to a tips sheet we have, how to effectively use those career chats. And then the final link is for our career readiness framework. And as I mentioned, scope and sequence, our team in Kent County, you can see that 9 through 12 on the left-hand side is, we said is if our students in Kent County, and I'm assuming the same is being done, it might just look a little bit different from county to county, but each of our counties are saying, if our kids, I like this phrase, the profile of a career ready grad, if we're looking at our high school students and saying, when they're ready to graduate, how do we know they're ready to graduate and be ready for a career? And if they're ready for a career, my guess is they're ready for college. How do we know that they're ready unless we start to put that profile together? And in doing so, working backwards to say, what are all the skills they should have collected along the way? What are all the activities they should have had? Or in other words, what awareness activities should they've had? What exploration should they have done? And what type of career preparation should they have done? And that's what we did by building out our framework, K through 12. So what next slide is to answer that question is, well, maybe an educator might say, oh, well, that's not my job. My job is to get them ready for 10th grade math if I'm a 9th grade math teacher. And my argument goes back to what Michelle showed earlier, that slide where it said less than 50% of students feel that they're ready for a career when they graduate high school. Or maybe as a teacher, we're saying, my job is to get them ready for college. And this slide, I think, sums it up perfectly. If we think we're just waiting to let college take care of it, number one, not all of our students are going to a 4-year degree. But even if they are, this stat shows that only 4 in 10 college students feel well prepared for their careers. So someone somewhere is saying it's somebody else's job. And yet some of our employers on the line, I know Steve Heiss has been on here and others on our panel earlier I've worked with personally. You are the ones telling me that we're getting people who are not ready. So somehow, somewhere we're dropping the ball and trying to prepare them for college or prepare them with academic skills. We're missing the boat and giving them this big picture of career readiness. If you could go to the next slide. So one of the things that I would propose that has been happening over time, and I'll just use one example, is this EDP. And we've talked about the educational development plan, doing your career cruising, your Naviance. And some of our districts, as we're starting to poll our districts, when we find a district that says, I'm actually doing something in every grade, I'm actually doing something 7th through 12th, that is actually a win. But what we do a little bit of digging, what we find is oftentimes that 7 through 12 EDP work is doing that interest inventory. And yes, those interests will change from 7th grade to 10th grade or 10th grade to 12th grade. But basically our counselors, and this is not a knock against them, they just don't have the capacity, and our educators aren't letting them in the classroom to do a little bit of a deeper dive. But when we do the interest inventory year after year after year, we're actually calling that a win because at least we're doing something every year. But that is not career readiness, and that's not career preparation, and that's not even effective use of the EDP. Okay, next slide. Another example that maybe is happening, and I know for a fact that I've seen, even in talking to teachers, one particular district I've worked with, they actually have a senior capstone class, and I'm thrilled that they have that. They're doing something really well to ensure that all of their graduating seniors have this capstone course. But we talked a little bit about it. And I said, the one struggle is we do nothing from 7 through 11. And then in that senior year, we try to cram all the career readiness activities we can into that last year to try to get them to be career ready. And that is not the best process either. Talking to that teacher, she would readily admit, she agrees that we need to be building upon those experiences, building from awareness to exploration, from exploration to that preparation, so that by the time they're juniors and seniors, they're not just going from an industry tour right into an apprenticeship. No, they're building those skills over time, just like you would any subject. All right, the next slide. What instead we should be looking for and hoping to be working to achieve is this balanced scope and sequence, where we're doing awareness at the K-5 level and a variety of different exposure experiences and activities. And we're doing exploration at the middle school level. And that exploration would carry on into high school, because many of our kids in 6th or 8th grade, we're not trying to say that they're going to know exactly what they want to do. They're starting the process. In fact, I've had several conversations in the past few days, both with Devin and Michelle and with other people. It is not our job to help these kids to walk away from high school knowing exactly what they want to do. If we can help them do that, that's a win. But what we are trying to do is to teach them the process for understanding what their career path could look like, and understanding the process of how to go about doing a little bit of digging and doing a little bit of research to figure out, okay, well, what am I interested in? What am I not? What can I cross off my list? And if I start down the path of doing something and find out that's not for me, I know how to go back to the drawing board to figure that out again. If we show the next slide, thank you. This is, in my mind, what a great and effective career readiness plan would look like. And this is just the 7 through 12, but of course we could extrapolate this out all the way from K through 12. But if you can see, doing the EDP interest inventory in 7th grade, it's not done over and over and over again, but we are, by the time they're done, they have a talent portfolio and they're doing a presentation on that. They're not going and doing apprenticeships out of just a whim. They're actually hearing guest speakers in the early levels and going and doing industry tours. Industry tours would lead to career fairs and starting to narrow that down. Career fairs move on to job shadows, and job shadows, we're starting to narrow that down further, where we have a better idea and we're starting to understand ourselves better through the EDP process, through these exploration activities, and as we're doing some preparation, that we have a better idea of what we're interested in, what our skill sets are, what our passions are, and how to put that all together. Now, please note that this is just one example. In no way am I or Michelle or Devin saying that it needs to be in this particular order. The order is less the concern as it is that there's a process and that you follow a certain number of steps as opposed to jumping from A to Z. But we were missing something when we're skipping B to Y. So, all right, so go ahead and say the next one. Thank you. Let me just share a quick example. One quick example of this is Forest Hills Eastern. And they didn't do it exactly on the slide before as we just showed, but they actually spoke. So some of you, and you could even put in the chat if you got a chance to hear them speak a couple of years ago when we were at the Go Center. Dan McElhaney and Lynn Svengros got a chance to share what they're doing at Forest Hills Eastern. And they're not the end all be all, but this is one great example of what we like to call bundling these services so that we don't have those random acts of career readiness, as Michelle mentioned earlier. So bundling would be to say, when we met with Forest Hills Eastern, they had said, hey, they reached out to our team and to me, and I came in and sat down with them and consulted, and some of my colleagues did as well. And they said, we would love to actually have some guest speakers come in and talk to our students about different careers, a variety of careers, and just so they get exposure to some. And we thought that was a great idea. And they said, in an ideal world, we would also be able to get them, take them out and go do some tours. And we said, fantastic. Now we're starting to see some combination. But one of my colleagues brought up a point. She goes, okay, so where are your counselors at in this conversation? And they said, what do you mean? Like, well, are they doing anything with their interest inventories? Or are they doing anything with their EDPs? Are they doing anything like, no, we hadn't really considered that. And that was the aha for them, I think. We brought in the counselors, where the counselors had them do a Holland Code assessment before they even met with the guest speakers. So now they have a little bit of idea where their skill sets are, where their interests and their passions lie. The guest speakers came in and were able to talk about a variety of pathways. That first year, I think we had 8 guest speakers. This next year, I believe they're looking to have, I think, double that, maybe even more. But then students would take notes and ask questions of the guests. Obviously, some of them, they were more interested in other. Why? Because they were finding that there were certain speakers that aligned with their interests and passions. And then based on those guest speakers, and based on their Holland Code assessments, students self-selected as to which business they wanted to go visit for the industry tour. And of course, there's never no perfect way of doing that, but the counselors, to the best of their ability, tried, and the teachers tried to divvy those kids up that they could at least get either their first, second, or third choice to go and see one of those businesses and see them in action. When they did that, they came back, they had to share. We said, you can't just come back and then go about business as usual. You have to come back and reflect. That's what you do when you do any other type of activity. So they came back and they had a moment to, in small groups were able to reflect, to share out their experiences, what they liked, what they didn't. And Lynn and Dan were able to share with me later. They said it was really rich conversation because the kids were able to share. And some of them had different experiences based on the business they went to. Finally, we said it can't be, again, this one-off. You can't do the career exploration separate from what you do in school. You have to embed it within what you're doing. So they actually created a class project where kids did research papers based on careers of interest. And again, some of the data that our teachers got was really impressive. And they said they've included this process now year after year. COVID obviously has put a little bit of a halt to that, but now they're using that process and they're hoping to do it again next year. This is what a bundled, embedded, this is what a scope and sequence of career readiness experiences looks like, as opposed to just, as I like to call it, doing target practice or shooting pew, 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 just trying different random career readiness activities. All right. So one of the things that we did, this is kind of shifting gears a little bit. What are some of the things that we've created that you can have as a free resource to use? Obviously, I think you're going to have access to the PowerPoint afterwards, and you can get an access to our career readiness framework page. But in addition to that, at the beginning of the pandemic, we said, how are we going to meet the needs of our students? How are we going to meet the needs of our educators? And two of my colleagues came up with some great programs. Krista came up with career chats, and Della Meller came up with this professional pop-up panels. And both essentially the goal is to try to meet with students. And thank you for opening that. So you can see we actually have an archive of, I don't even know where we're at now, but I know we're like well over 50. And if they're not on here, we have more of them to add, but on our YouTube channel. And we started off, actually, Krista started doing this with just the health industry because that was one of her sectors. And since then, she's been specifically targeting all of our different career clusters. That's the goal, is to work through all of our career clusters and get a number of videos in each of those. This past year, we've been really intentional about trying to get people of color in, because our students are often saying, that's great, but I don't see anybody that looks like me. So we're trying to make sure we're trying to help point to a bunch of different careers and to give kids exposure opportunities. This is one low-hanging fruit opportunity. Again, career chats, though, is not the end-all be-all. This should just be one piece of the puzzle. I would suggest it would be something that's done earlier, but it can be done often. An opportunity for kids to get some career exposure. They can watch them live, because we have regular opportunities to do them and sign up for them, or they can watch recorded versions of it. And then that activity I mentioned earlier was that tips to effectively using those career recorded videos. We have that sheet that you can say, okay, now what? Great, we watched the video, so we can wash our hands. We did career readiness. No, it's really not effective if we don't follow it up with something. So that document that we provided in the PowerPoint earlier would be an opportunity to follow up and ask some targeted questions to kids, getting them to do some thinking, put them in Socratic circles and have some follow-up discussion. This is when we do these types of things. This came as a result of the pandemic, but it's another way that we can embed career readiness into our content and into our instruction. Okay. Oops. Oh, and that, thank you. And this is the link to our professional pop-up panel. These are a little bit longer links, so we don't have as many of them, and we've put a little bit of a hold on them. Opportunity for Della Meller to interview people of color, to not only talk about their career journey, but also different things that they've had to go through in order to get where they're at in their journey. So again, opportunities to be able to share and be able to allow kids to be exposed to careers, things that they wouldn't have otherwise. All right. So to finish up, it's the process, the approach, and the real gift. And the real gift, no, is not a fish. But we do want to teach career awareness, and we want to teach career exploration, and then we prepare them for the next. But it's not about teaching or giving the fish. We want to teach them how to fish. If you teach a man to fish, you feed him for a lifetime. And so one of the things I want to leave with is not only do we not want to do random acts of career readiness, but we as career readiness professionals who are on this call, it is our job to walk alongside our educators to help them, because we're all at different levels. Some of our teachers, we know, and our counselors, this doesn't happen if we don't walk alongside them. But at some point, we want to give them the skills and the abilities. I'm just gonna shout out a kudos to one of my colleagues, Nicole Decro. I'm not sure if she's on here, but she's actually working to do career readiness in her district. She sent out a letter to her parents to say, hey, next year, these are some of the things I'd like to do around career readiness in our school. She's already received in just a couple of weeks 120 plus responses from parents that, yes, count me in for that. So it's our job to teach our teachers and our counselors how they can do that for themselves so that they actually have an unending supply of exposure to professionals and how we can embed that back into the classroom. So random acts of career readiness and random acts of career development are like stinky fish. It's time to throw them out. Early awareness leads to better exploration, and better exploration leads to more productive preparation. So are you ready to fish? All of our contacts, Michelle's, Devin's, and myself, our email address is up there. We work with Muskegon, NC RISA, and Kent ISD. And thank you. We have Krista posted the archive of our videos in the chat right there. With that, I am going to pass it over. And I can't remember who is this we were going to next for wrapping up and doing the open discussion.
It'd be me, Eric, and I want to say thank you to Michelle, Devin, and Eric for presenting today. Again, the presentation will be sent out probably the next day or two after this, so you have access to all the links that were in there. We did have a couple questions come in for the team. We'll start with Maureen. She was asking about the funds to put in students' accounts. I believe she was talking about Kickstart to Career and how much is in place in that account for each of the projects.
I think it varies. The funds are started from our foundation, our community foundation here in Muskegon. They're the ones that fund the initial accounts, and the initial accounts are set up with $50. And then depending on the connection activity, like March is reading month, if the students complete their reading chart, I think they're getting a $5 incentive. For the project, I think it's similar. And as it continues to grow, because each year that grows by a grade level, we want to have further connections as they get into middle school and high school. And so that's really governed by the foundation, how much they will determine for each project.
And just the concept is students have access to those bank accounts once they graduate to hopefully use for some type of post-secondary use, whether it's college or other certification paths they might travel. A second question came in, are parents as well as teachers engaged in the students' career exploration process? Maybe all three of you can speak to that aspect of how parents are involved in the process.
Yeah, ready. I'll jump in first. First of all, the great question. And the answer is, yes, they can be, and yes, they should be. I will admit, just being full transparency, I don't think that's our strength yet, and that's something we need to work on developing. But it is in the Michigan Career Development Model as an encouragement to do that. And I mean, every one of our counties are a little bit different. I know in Kent County, we have a program called Parents as Career Coaches. So it's an opportunity for parents to learn how they can be a part of that process and help walk alongside. Obviously, with a lot of our EDP tools now, those are available online. And I know at least Zello, if not probably Naviance and others, allow parents to have access to a parent portal. And I would be remiss if I didn't mention sparksuccess.org. There was an initiative with West Michigan Works, I believe, might have been a part of that, and the Voss Foundation, and they had created a website called Spark Success. It's not an active website, but there's plenty of resources and stuff on there for parents. So great question.
And I would jump in as well. Here in Muskegon, especially with our Kickstart to Career program, we've made sure that we've shared out the 6 career zones with our parents and gave all parents K through 3 and gave them kind of conversation starters around those of what those can look like at that level. And then also with our 5th and 6th grade parents, we have a project coming up this spring that we are also giving them the information around the career zones and what that might look like at that level. So it is an important piece to engage those parents so they know how to have those conversations, so they know what the districts are doing and what career development looks like to better support their students in that process.
And though it wasn't our intent, I think that the Google Classroom platform has been able to encourage and incorporate teachers in their classrooms and also provide parents, as long as the students have technology and access at home, they can work on these classrooms at home or show parents what they learned about the Career Tech Center. And we can monitor that in the Google Classroom as well to see who's been accessing that information and providing that information. And like I said, you can open that up to teachers. You can open that up to each of you. If that's a classroom you want to incorporate into your class itself. I know we've created professional development opportunities in the form of resume creation, in the form of scholarship information, that all of those could be delivered virtually to students, and parents can access that same information through their students' accounts.
Great, thank you. One last call for questions from our audience today for our 3 presenters. That's all I see in the chat. All right, again, thank you to Michelle, Eric, and Devin for providing some information. Again, the information will be sent out. Lisa Hungerford from Talent 2025 will send out a link to the recording as well as today's presentation slide deck, so you have access to all the links. She may not get that out till end of the week. I think she's out of the office for a couple of days, but watch for that from Lisa Hungerford from Talent 2025. And just want to thank you all for attending the series this year. Before you leave today, we'd appreciate it if you could fill out the survey, which is linked in the chat now. So please make sure to fill out that survey for us as we think about how we plan for next year and doing a series or something of this nature again in the future. Thanks for joining today. We appreciate it. Have a great afternoon.